Welcome to Hammerspace Recording. My name is Troy Baban, and today we are having a look at the Synergy Fryette Ultralead module. I've left the Ultralead module sort of on the end of my demoing all of these different Synergy modules, which once again, thank you very much to Synergy for sending them to me to demo, because it's been really fun just hearing how they sound and all the differences. I do have experience with the real Ultralead head. I actually own one of the 90s Pitbulls without the EQ, so it's a little different to the module that we'll look at today, but I'm quite familiar with the way that sounds and how it feels to play. So yeah, it's been quite interesting to just pull this guy up and twist some knobs and see what it does. I've got quite a lot of Fryette gear in the studio. I've got it's the VHT Pitbull Ultralead. I think it's the one it's called. I've got a Fryette power station. I'm borrowing a Fryette 292 power amp off a friend of mine. Shout out Richo if he watches this. And I also have the Deliverance module for Synergy, which I've had for like 5 years or something. So I think I kind of get what the Fryette sound is. I really enjoy playing through it. It feels quite comfortable for the way that I play, because I like being really active with my right hand and, you know, not digging in too much, but just like feeling the guitar rebound as I strum a chord. I think the Fryette amps are really responsive to good rhythm playing, and that's something that I've always enjoyed with playing those amps. Let's fire the Ultralead up in the Syn20IR as we always do. I'm going to reamp some guitar, which is my Gibson 97 standard Les Paul, all those words, with Bareknuckle cold sweats, reamping through my Undertone Audio GB tracker in through the Syn20IR into a Marshall 4x12 in the other room, mic'd with a single SM57, and that's a vintage 30 speaker. So let's have a listen. I don't know about you guys, this sounds pretty good to me. Once again, I've had quite a bit of experience with the VHT Pitbull Ultralead. I've owned one it's been about 12 months actually. I haven't had it for that long, but I've used it for a bunch of sessions and jammed around on it a little bit. I'd say that the actual head, I feel like it took me a little while to get how it worked. And it's just, there was a couple of little unique things, and it might have just been a me problem and not a design problem. I think it's probably just always a me problem. But yeah, it took me a little while to work it out. I'd say the Ultralead module took me no time to work out. I plugged it in, I twisted the knobs, and it immediately sounded the way it should, which I think is a pretty good sign. I've set this module up the way I set the Deliverance module up, in that the green channel I've set to a lower gain sound, the red channel I've set to a high gain sound, and you can do that with the switches on the front of the module. They can both be high gain if you want, they can both be low gain if you want, it's completely up to you. But I think this makes the most sense, you know, we're just stepping through the levels of gain. I find this to be such a comfortable rhythm sound to play. Something about playing a D chord through this module feels really good. I feel like I'm not digging in that much when I pick, but the amp is just responding so clearly to my playing that it's just, I don't have to work that hard to make it happen. I would say that the amp and this module, and in fact most of the Fryette gear that I've tried, has really suited the way I play. Weirdly enough, there's been a few guitar players that I've worked with in the studio that haven't been able to make the most out of it. I've heard people refer to the Fryette sound as quite dry, and I think it is one of those things where it does reveal if you aren't really attacking the guitar in the right way or playing cleanly enough. So in that respect, it can be a little tricky to work out if you're not that sort of player. But I think if you play the module long enough, it really makes you play better and cleaner. So we're on the green channel at the moment. I forgot to mention I'm playing my Shure standard, Koa standard with Doug Aldrich bridge humbucker and some ML single coils in the neck and middle. And I've just been super into this guitar again after taking a couple of years away from it, really. The amp just roars, like it has so much solidity to it. It's not overwhelmingly like big in the bottom, but it just feels really powerful and really clear. There's like it's not glassy, but there's like this real clarity to the mid-range, the upper mids, that just make all the notes of a chord ring out really cleanly and clearly, which is great. I set the module to pretty much halfway as I started, which it's not necessarily the best way to dial in an amp, but I think you got to start somewhere, right? I'm not going to have everything all the way up or all the way down. The gain at 12 o'clock in the green channel feels great to me. We'll turn it down and see what sort of lower gain sounds we get. It's quite charming. It's probably a little bright for what I like in this sort of sound. So I'd be tempted to EQ some of the top end down a little bit, maybe turn the reactance down if I was using this as more of a clean channel. On the reactance and the structure switches, I don't really have a huge preference. I think C felt really good for some zhunk, zhunk, zhunk rhythm parts, mostly because it just bounced back a little bit, a bit differently. Just felt like it was maybe a little slower, and yeah, maybe if you're playing more drop tuning stuff or slower tempo songs, I think it would feel really good. I don't mind leaving this in structure switch A just for this demo, because having that little bit of extra top end clarity is something that I think also works really well with this module. The reactance, I actually don't mind it. Anywhere from that sort of 10 to 1 range. It doesn't get really harsh the more you crank it up, but I think anywhere around there feels pretty good. And even as I've been playing it for maybe the last 20 minutes before I started recording, somewhere in that felt pretty good to me. Now, there's heaps of gain on this module in the lower gain setting and the higher gain setting. Let's just hear what that sounds like. I mean, I don't need more gain than that for most of the things that I do. It sounds like my standard rock guitar sound, which I'd be pretty happy with that. Let's kick the high gain switch on and hear what it sounds like. Yeah, it certainly adds a lot more gain to it. But to be honest, most of the work I do, I'd be happy with that and just flick the high gain on if I'm going to do a lead or play something maybe a little bit heavier. The EQ controls on this, before we talk about the graphic, because in the graphics its own thing, the EQ controls are pretty active, more as a boost, less as a cut. Like I felt like the mid-range control, sorry, the treble control, it's darker by turning it all the way down, but it's not like throwing a blanket on the speaker, whereas turning it all the way up does get a lot brighter. The bass on this is quite interesting because when you start to incorporate the graphic EQ, which I'll probably talk about though, the interaction between those two in a second, but having it in there to dial down and then dialing up a bit of extra bass can open up a different level of tone in this module. So I found that there was a lot of bottom in this without having to touch the low frequency knob. If anything, I noticed that the more it felt like it got a little bit too thick for me, so I didn't mind running it a little bit more like 10 o'clock, and that's without even trying to compensate later down the module with anything. The presence knob on this doesn't sound too active to me. I'm not really certain why that is. It's a subtle air sort of a thing. I might have to look into why that is not like doing heaps. Maybe it works differently depending on some of the other settings that are in the amp. That's often how these things work. If you're turning something you don't notice, it makes a huge difference. But otherwise, mid-range control. Kind of like having just a little bit more than halfway. Give it a little bit more of that, I don't know, just a little bit more of that growly sound. Okay, we're in the lower gain setting. The last thing to talk about is this shift switch. Which shifts the EQ points, I believe. It's there's a similar switch on my VHT head, which I'm sort of used to what that does. I quite like it in the up position with higher gain sounds, which is how I've got it run on the red channel at the moment if I was to flick over to that. And then if we go to the green channel in the shift down and lower gain. Red. Quite a contrasting difference in tone there. So, the amp and the module are known for being, well, let's talk about the amp first. It is pretty tweakable. There's a lot of like extra switches and way you can run the gain and certain things you can do with the volume knobs that really change the tonal palette of the amp. And yeah, again, that's without talking about the graphic EQ. And I think that's pretty well represented in this module as well. Like even just with like that tonal shift between the green and the red that I did, it feels pretty different and quite versatile. Let's move on and have a quick chat about the graphic EQ, which I think from what I understand, this is not like the EQ in a Mesa Boogie like Mark Series amp, where the initial thing is just to V it and expect you're gonna have glorious tones. If anyone's played a Mark Series amp or even the 2CP module, like Synergy module, it sounds kind of weird until you really experiment with that graphic EQ and do that V thing or something approximating that. And I don't think this module needs the graphic to sound good. And I think hopefully I've demonstrated that already. Like, Like, I can play that tone no problem. I can go out and do a gig with that and be really happy all night. I don't feel like I need the graphic to fix any issues within that. So the graphic is not the sort of thing where I'm immediately going to go to a V shape and expect it's all going to be magical. It's something where I can treat it more like what I would do with an actual graphic EQ, like a 31 band in a live situation or a parametric EQ in a studio. And I can just add a little bit here and a little bit there to taste, to take a little bit away, just to shape the tone. The great thing about this module is that the EQ is selectable to a point across both channels. So you can kick it in on both channels when it's in the in position, and you'll notice the blue light illuminates to show us that it is working. And it's working across both channels. Or you can have it only operational on the red channel. Which is great. If you did want to get mega scoop heavy metal tones out of this thing, then you could set that up in the red channel but still have your reasonable normal rock sound in the green channel. Probably the only criticism of this amp, and it's a weird criticism to make, I think everybody understands, but those little faders, little sliders are quite difficult to move. Well, no, they're not difficult to move. That's kind of the problem. They are very, very sensitive, and it's because the throw of the fader is like, well, probably about, I don't know, like 1.5 centimeters. So what's that, 15 millimeters or so? It might be less than that. So a little change, like a millimeter change, is quite a significant boost or cut. And so I think it's the sort of thing that once you set it, I don't know if I'd be that keen to be moving it much more than that. Let's just have a look at what it sounds like we'll go to the red channel actually. And what I'm going to do is the thing that I suggested maybe you don't need to do, which is to V it and treat it like a Mesa Boogie. So let's just take the 630 slider down quite a bit. Let's just boost the lows and we'll boost the highs and hear what it sounds like. And it may not come through that clearly on the camera, but we'll see. Let's turn the EQ off. It's a pretty noticeable tonal change. It's exactly what you'd expect. It's very active. I'm not sure. Yeah. It's 12 dB boost and cut each way. So you've got 24 dB of range, like top to bottom at those frequency points, which are 100, 250, 630, 1.2 kilohertz, 2.5 kilohertz, and 6 kilohertz. So it covers the whole spectrum of guitar frequencies, really, like the important parts. I'm actually really happy to see 1.2K on there because that's one of my favorite frequencies to boost when I'm mixing guitars. And I'm going to neutralize the EQ a little bit, which is very sensitive to touch. So you just have to forgive me if it takes a second to do that. It feels to me like there is a center detent, whatever you say it, point, but it's quite easy to go past it as you're pushing it up and down. So I don't want to be too critical of that part of this module because it's really, it's a lot to ask of such a small fader in such a small space. There's only so much you can fit into a Synergy module. So, you know, you take what you can get really, like for the versatility of the amp. It's reasonably zeroed out. So let's just hear what 1.2K sounds like pushing that up. I like that a lot. It's probably not going to be everyone's favorite way of running this, but if you want to be heard among a lot of other people, that's where you're going to be able to crank it up and be all audible. I went through the full frequency sweep in the reamp section, so you can check that out if you want to. There's a lot that you can do to add bass in this. That's a thick and chunky boy. It's interesting that 630 fader, it's pretty honky sounding. It feels quite narrow as you push it up. It's quite cool for soloing, actually. It's not the sort of thing I'd use for that sort of thing, but you know, ripping a lead, it might be quite cool to kick something like that in. That's maxed out as well, so we'll turn that back to normal. And then you can hear pulling out 1.2K, it really, you just lose the guitar. That's where the important frequencies are, everybody. 2.5. And then 6K. The 6K slide is interesting too, because it doesn't feel like it adds this like real aggressive top end sizzle to the sound. It's lower than that. It's I could be incorrect on this, but I feel like on the Mark series, when I push up that fader, it has a lot more sizzle to it, and it's quite a gnarly sound. So if you don't deal with that in other ways, it can be pretty aggressive and nasty. So in terms of how to use this EQ, I mean, I think it's a really hard thing to demo without having it in context with something else. And to be honest, I probably would need to be doing this, maybe not with two hands, but sitting a little close to the amp and really just nerding out, like playing notes as I'm doing it. So I don't want to go too much deeper into this, to be honest, other than just demoing that side of it. But let's just try one more thing out of my own interest, which is let's take a lot of bass out and just see what happens to this amp if we can like cut the bass at one point in the amp and boost it later on with the graphic EQ. So let's just hear what the bass knob does again. So what happens if we kill it all the way and we boost it up in the low end? Pretty cool. If we want to get a bit more mega scoop on it, what can we do? Let's just take out a bit of the 630, not like what you would do with the Mark series. We'll take it out a tiny bit. So if you're into the metric system like I am, I've probably moved the 100 Hertz slider. I'm not sure how easy it is to see on the video, but 100 Hertz slider, the 630, the 1.2 and the 6K slider within like 1 to 2 millimeters cut or boost. Taking the EQ in and out sounds like this. Like that's a pretty drastic tone change. So once again, in terms of if you're a tweaker, and if you want to really work out how to dial your amp in for a very specific sound, that's pretty versatile, I think. So that's the Fryette Ultralead module. It sounds really, really great. I'm going to try and do a demo comparing it to my actual Ultralead head, which hopefully you can check that out at some point very soon. But yeah, another great module from Synergy and Fryette. So far, it's all been pretty positive. So I'm going to leave it there. Please, if you haven't done so far, like the channel. Oh, every time I screw this up, like the video and subscribe to the channel. Like the video as well, please, if you don't mind. And you know, you can find me on the internet at Hammerspace Recording and www.hammerspacerecording.com if you want to buy some Tonex packs and all this other stuff. And yeah, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you so much. Peace.